What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On NHL podcast. We got a new number one, Mr. Denker. Boom. Read it and weep. You're going to be getting, and because of that, in honor of that, you're getting the Locked On Avalanche intro. There we go. Let's listen to it. Because
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes. Welcome, everybody, to the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Chris Maselli from Locked On Avalanche. With me, as always, on these Thursday editions is Mr. Adam Denker from Locked On Lightning. And if you were watching over on YouTube, you caught the intro for the Locked On Avalanche because we have a new number one. So in honor of them, you get the intro, at least on the YouTube side of the Locked On Avalanche. Couldn't be happier, my friend. I even if it was any other team, I think I might be happy. Not as happy because it's my boys back on top. So we have a new number one, and we'll go through all of that. But how you feeling on this this glorious power ranking Thursday that we've never had in quite some time?
Glad to see at least one of the teams in the top four at least escape some sort of version of purgatory. It's like that scene in Shawshank Redemption when Andy Dufresne escapes and he's just raising his hands towards the heavens.
It's beautiful. Yes, I'm not gonna take my shirt off like he did, but I was damn near close. So yeah, so we have a fresher batch of power rankings to get to today. We're also going to be talking about kind of those fringe playoff teams. Could any of them move up or down? And we'll also just look at the tops of the standings. And can any of the teams in the lead right now, can they be caught by any of the teams below them, the second and third place teams? Can they be caught? So we'll start right off the bat like we always do. And if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to get the full screen power rankings, and then we'll break it down as we always do. And there you see it. I think I might just leave this up for the duration, like full screen. People don't need to see us.
Yeah,
I'll just leave full screen up so they can see Avalanche at number one.
They're not here to look at our faces. They're here to look at the power rankings.
Absolutely. So that moves the Panthers down to number 2. The Hurricanes move up to number 3, which means the Lightning move down to number 4. The Leafs stand pat at number 5. The Flames move up 3 spots to number 6. The Minnesota Wild move down 1 to number 7. The Rangers stay put at 8. You have the Penguins moving down 2 to number 9, and the Capitals stay put at number 10. So that is your top 10. And I think that the big change, obviously, at the top. You got any problems with that? Other than, do you feel like your Lightning moved down a spot? So how do you feel about that, sir?
I'm not mad about. I can sit here and be mad about it, but at the same time, this team has, up until last night when they played Edmonton, hadn't played a game in 8 days. So I see why they got moved down. It wasn't that they played bad. It's just they didn't do anything in the span of it. They played one game, and that was against the New Jersey Devils, which, by the way, was a great game. I was in the building for that. Got to see a little Kucherov action on a breakaway goal. But I don't have a problem with any of this. I think that still, as much as we complained that the Panthers were in first place for, I don't know, I guess since December?
For a long time. Very long time. They were switching back and forth with the Canes a couple weeks. They went back and forth. But when that stopped, they've been in first for months, for a few months right now. So
yeah. So I don't have a problem with it. I think the Panthers are still one of the top teams in the league. They've shown it, and they seem they seem to also be the sweetheart of the hockey world. I think everybody's rooting for the Panthers to win the Stanley Cup, especially after their somewhat improbable season last year. I don't think a lot of people realized how good they were until they ran up against my Lightning in the playoffs. And, given the fact that they were missing a couple of players and they still took my Lightning to the brink, I mean, shows how good of a team they are. And they continue that role into this year. And then Canes are the same thing. They've been playing incredible this season, pretty much dominating the Metropolitan Division all season long. But I don't have a problem with where the Lightning are. I think it just makes that much better for when they capture another Stanley Cup this year for the third consecutive year. And
they
the
have the
Leafs,
blueprint, man.
yeah,
They
they
know how
have
to
the
do it.
blueprint. They know how to do it. They've been there before. And the Leafs
Sure.
at number 5. I don't know about you. I just think it's time to give the Flames their due. The Flames are the hottest team, no pun intended, in the National Hockey League right now. Chris, do you think
Yeah.
that the Flames it's a little bit of an injustice where they are right now in the rankings?
I mean, they've won 10 in a row, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's I would say they got to be a top 5 team right now, I feel. Yeah. I think maybe the Leafs should have moved that. And again, that's not to slight Toronto. Toronto's having a great season, but
Yeah.
when a team is that hot, yeah, I think they should move up. And they moved up 3, so they went from 9 to 6. But I think giving them their due for right now, for right here and right now,
Yeah.
man, they're smoking hot, and they're living up to their nickname, basically. So, what do you think of like the Rangers? They're just kind of hanging around. I feel like the shine has like rubbed off on them, but they're not into the fact of they're not playing well. They clearly are, but they're kind of just hanging around there, and I kind of feel like they're becoming that like forgotten team. But they're still producing. I mean, in terms of overall standings, in terms of points, they're 5th. They're 5th behind the Avalanche, behind the top 4 that we have right there.
Yeah.
Avalanche, Panthers, Canes, and Lightning, and then it's the Rangers. And I just feel like people are either waiting for them to just fall flat or just go on a little bit of a slow run, and it just hasn't happened. What are we expecting from the Rangers come playoff time?
I think we're going to see a team that is playing far beyond the talent level than anybody expected them to. I mean, they have, other than, I don't mean to sound biased, but we all know that Andrei Vasilevsky is the best goaltender on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
But Igor Shesterkin this year has really made a case for the Vezina, which has eluded Vasilevsky over the last couple of years. So, I mean, the way he has just taken this team and just catapulted them to the top of the NHL is unbelievable. But at the same time, I think of the reason why they're ranked maybe a lot lower than people would have liked them to is because they're young. They're really young. And I think there's a lot of people that are looking at the season that Chris Kreider is having. And, he's one of the top goal scorers in the league. They're still looking at this and they're just waiting for the other shoe to fall. And I think that's really what it comes down to. And I think they're just waiting for this team to fall off. And until they really prove it for real, which will come playoff time, I think people aren't going to take them seriously. I think this is a thing that we're going to have to see carry over into the playoffs, to where people are going to, once they win a couple of playoff games, I think that's when people will start to take them seriously.
Yeah, they're not playoff tested at all. That's going to be a whole new experience for those guys as a unit, obviously.
Yeah.
There's players on the team that have been to the playoffs, clearly. But let me ask you this: like, yeah, right now, if you were starting a team and everybody was a free agent, and it was like a fantasy draft or something like that to reassign players to teams, I would almost think 32 teams would want to go after Vasilevsky as the first goalie taken off of the board.
Yeah.
Say 3 years from now, is that still the case? Is Shesterkin going to be in that conversation? Is he going to be in the Vasilevsky conversation in 3 years from now or 5 years from now?
I
not
think
already.
I think in a couple of years, given just the way he has played this year, if he continues to build off of that, I mean, they're pretty much identical. The way they play in the crease, their strengths, and just their overall size. I mean, it's that Russian goaltender school that we've been seeing them pump out goaltenders the last 5 years. I think that we're going to see, as what we've seen the last couple of years, what we're going to see over the next 15 with Makar and Fox in the Norris Trophy. We're going to see that with Shesterkin and Vasilevsky in the Vezina. This guy is he's incredible considering, like I said, I mean, how young he is and just the way he's been able to elevate this team to where they are. And I think also the reason why people are kind of ranking them low is because look what the Pittsburgh Penguins have been doing all year. They played pretty much half a season without Malkin, and then Crosby has kind of just had this resurgence that you think that this is going to be the year where he starts to trail off, but I mean, it almost seems like he's getting better and better every single year, which is scary to think about. And given their goaltender situation, which I still don't think they're for real, I mean, I don't know how you're a 5 team, you're in the 5th spot in Columbus, and I guess this is kind of a good segue into our fringe playoff teams. But I don't know how you're Columbus and you look at this top 4 in the Metropolitan and think we have a shot at the playoffs.
Well, let's. You want to do playoffs next?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's roll right into it.
Let's hear from Bet Online first, and then we'll get to some playoffs. But betonline.net, that's your place to go for all of your sports betting needs. In football, it might be over with for this season, but you still have basketball in full steam ahead mode with both pro and college hoops, and March Madness is right around the corner, obviously. So from all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, betonline.net is your number one spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best place for your sports scores, podcasts, and news for this season. And it isn't just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for the NHL, boxing, and UFC. So head over to the website today and use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and all of the action. That's betonline.net, where the game starts. So let us take a look at kind of these fringe playoff teams and kind of look into our crystal ball and kind of guess, can any of these teams on the outside looking in find their way in? Where are we starting? On the East Coast?
Let's go with the East Coast. All right. Let's knock that
right
out
now,
because I think that the West is really fun to talk about.
Yeah. And it's odd because like normally you don't have this much separation between teams when it comes to playoff spots and wild cards. So in the Atlantic, obviously you have the Panthers, the Lightning, and Maple Leafs as the top 3. In the Metropolitan, you have the Hurricanes, the Penguins, and the Rangers as your top 3. And right now your wild cards are the Capitals and the Blues. Just outside I don't want to say just outside, on the outside looking in, you have Columbus, who you've talked about quite a bit on our Thursday edition of Locked On NHL. You have the Red Wings, and then that's really it. Those are your only real competitors, because after that, it goes to the Islanders, who are 17 points away from the last wild card spot. So you have the Blue Jackets, who are 7, and the Red Wings, who are 10. And even that's a stretch. So really, is this a one-team show here with the Blue Jackets, the only one really in contention to maybe push for a wild card spot?
I mean, if anything, that the last couple of years of Blue Jackets have, actually the last 3 years that the Blue Jackets have shown us, is that don't count them out. I mean, covering the Lightning, I know full well what kind of team the Blue Jackets are. Just obviously everybody knows 3 years ago, actually, when the Lightning got bounced in the first round by them. And it just seems like every year where they give away players because, they just don't want to pay those high salaries. They just have this mentality about next guy up. And really, I mean, you've seen it. I mean, look at this team, the way they've been playing recently. Patrick Laine has just been having a resurgence there in Columbus. They're won their last 4 games. And Boston's not the usual Boston team that we see the last couple of years. I think they're a little bit on the end of their prime as an overall group. I think that a lot of these players have a lot of miles on them, and I wouldn't be surprised if we're rolling into the last couple of weeks of the season and Columbus is a point or two behind Boston.
Could be. I mean, and you look at Columbus is on a 4-game winning streak. Their last 10, they're 8-2-0. And look at the two teams in the wild card spot. It's Washington and it's Boston, two aging teams.
Yeah.
So that's good and it's bad. It's good because they've been through this stuff before, and they know how to turn it on when they need to turn it on and make a playoff push. But on the other end, age plays a factor. And Washington's the oldest team in the league. Did the bones just get a little brittle towards the end of the year? I don't know. But, and that's, you still have Ovechkin. So he's going to prop you up when he needs to. And Boston still has Marchand and Pasternak and those guys, and they'll lift them up when they need to. But yeah, when you have an upstart team like Columbus, they keep doing stuff like that. They keep going 8-2-0 in their last 10, while Washington goes 5-5-0 and Boston goes 5-4-1. They're going to catch them.
Yeah.
If that continues. So that's really the only race. But forward thinking, I watched the Red Wings play the other night when they played the Avalanche, and that's two games that the Avalanche played against them, obviously, and the Avalanche kind of handled them. But you can see moments of these guys are going to be good.
Yeah.
So next year, I think it'll improve a little bit more, and then maybe 2 years from now, they will be in the mix. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So, all right, over to the West. In the Central, you have the Avalanche, the Blues, and the Wild as the top three. Pacific, you got the Flames, the Knights, and the Kings in the top three. And like I said, for next segment, we'll talk about the tops of the standings. As your wild cards, you have the Predators, and the Oilers have snuck back in to a playoff spot. As horrible as they were playing in the middle of the season, they've turned it around. Although they've lost 2 in a row, but they are holding on to that last playoff spot. Right on the outside looking in, you have the Anaheim Ducks, who are actually tied in points with them, but Edmonton has 2 games in hand. You have the Dallas Stars. You have the Vancouver Canucks still in it. I would say the Winnipeg Jets are still in it. And the Sharks are just in free fall right now. They've lost 7 in a row. Points wise, they're 9 points back, so it's not completely over, but the way they're playing might tell you that it is. So, and I think we'll kind of stop there, because then you got the Blackhawks, the Kraken, and the Coyotes, who have been out of it since October. What do we think here, man? This is gonna be the fun conference. East is pretty much set. This will be fun.
Yeah, Dallas and Nashville are currently playing right now, and they're tied at 1 in the second period. So if Dallas wins tonight, they catapult themselves ahead of Anaheim and Edmonton. So we're talking about them right in the thick of it. Edmonton, great game the other night against my Lightning. Unfortunately, they came up short for them. Great for my guys. But, I mean, the way when you have Draisaitl and McDavid just completely just untethered, just doing everything they're allowed to do, which we saw in that Lightning game. It was really just, the Lightning versus Mike Smith instead of McDavid and Draisaitl versus the Lightning, because really that's what it came down to, was the goaltending situation. And that's the question I think I'm going to throw to you, is that, and we've kind of spoken about this on the rankings, and this has kind of been the issue all season long for Edmonton. You have the 2 best players in the league, and now that you got Evander Kane, you're able to spread out that center position with Nugent Hopkins on the third line. But really, what it comes down to is goaltending. How far can we expect Edmonton to go? No disrespect to Mike Smith, but I think we could agree that he's not the answer at this point in the season.
No, I think when it's all said and done, I think that they will look back on it and say, the offense did everything that they could, and the goaltending is what did them in. Yeah. And that was kind of the thought process at the beginning of the season. It really was. And for them to not really address it, and maybe they will at the trade deadline, but who are you going to get? Like, I mean, you're going to get maybe somebody that's a little bit of an improvement, but you're not getting a A1 starter at unless you go after Fleury. I mean, would they make a move for Marc-Andre Fleury? That would kind of move the needle a little bit, I think. But again, he's what's he, 37, 38 years old?
Yeah.
He's 1 year removed from a Vezina trophy, so he's still got it. If that happens, okay, then maybe we're making headway and making, heading in the right direction, obviously. But they got to make a move sooner rather than later, because if they wait till the trade deadline, you're not playing a lot of games with that new team. And we saw how it worked out for him even when he had somewhat of an off season with the Blackhawks. They got off to a horrific start. So, and I'm not saying it was all him. They made a lot of moves, so they had a lot of players that were kind of starting off fresh, and it took a long time to get going. Could be a different animal going over to Edmonton. I don't know if I haven't really heard much coming out of Edmonton and what they're going to do for trade season, but they have to address the goalie situation or it's another one and done for them. I think as good as McDavid and Draisaitl are, it's just so much to ask those guys to carry a 7-game series. It's just so tough.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they need to be super aggressive at the trade deadline and call all teams that are willing to get rid of their goaltenders. A couple of names come to mind: Georgiev from the Rangers, Korpisalo from the Blue Jackets, even Hopi from Dallas. Because Jake Ottinger's got it pretty much locked down in Dallas. I mean,
yes, he does.
You got to go out there and I don't know what the Edmonton farm system looks like right now, but we've seen what the Lightning have done the last couple of years, trading first-round draft picks, trading prospects, top prospects. I think if you're Edmonton, you kind of have to trade for a guy where, yes, at the end of the day, it might look like a lopsided trade and you're giving up too much, but is that really going to matter if you're coming away with a Stanley Cup at the end of the season?
Yeah. We'll see. I don't know, man. There'll be an interesting team to watch at trade deadline. Definitely. What do you think of? We talked about Anaheim quite a bit. Where are they? They've fallen to number 18 in our rankings, and they're out of a playoff spot right now. They were always that team that we were watching. Like, can they keep this up? I think for the most part they have, but they've fallen a little bit, and they are out of a playoff spot right now. But one win puts them right back not only into the wild card scenario, but number 3 in their division. So that's what they're going for. I mean, if it just happens to a wild card falls in their lap, okay, but they're not out of their own division.
Yeah.
What do you think we're going to get with Anaheim?
I just think that really, they're playing at a high pace right now, but I can't see them being able to match that with Edmonton and Nashville down the road. I just think at the end of the day, this is just still a young team, and you got to tip your cap to them at the end of the year because, hey, listen, if they make the playoffs, I'll come on the show the next time we record and say that it was wrong. But this is a young team that is outperforming. We saw that with the Rangers the last couple of years. And I think, if they go into the playoffs, that's great. But if they don't miss the playoffs, it's not the end of the world. You're still have a ton of talent coming your way over the next couple of years. But I just think that their level of play is not going to be able to stay up with the other teams in this.
But what about? I mean, as far as the Pacific goes, I mean, you have the Kings, and the Kings are unproven.
Yeah,
that's an unproven team. So is it the third place team in the Pacific is going to win it out, or it's just going to be these two teams, can't get a win and they're gonna lose it if that makes any sense. Like, it's tough to really put your support behind either one of these teams because they haven't proven it yet, and they're young and they're still learning how to win. So we're saying like, the Ducks, I don't think they can catch teams like Edmonton. That might be true, but you would have to think the Ducks can catch a team like the Kings.
I don't know. I think the Kings have they have a lot more veteran leadership and experience on there. You got Drew Doughty, you got Jonathan Quick, you got Philip Deneau, who they picked up in the free agency, who, by the way, I now looking at that and where this team is, I think that was the best signing of the offseason. So you got a lot more veteran leadership and presence on this team where you have guys that have been there. I mean, so does Anaheim, but not to the extent of some of the players that the Kings have. Dustin Brown, who was the captain of one of their Stanley Cup teams. So that just shows you still have a good number of guys from those 2 Stanley Cup teams that won in LA, where you really have a small number of guys in Anaheim that, yes, they were top players. Gibson gets left, but at the end of the day, you're still, you still don't have as much. You have a lot more young guys, a lot more guys that are still trying to find their way in the NHL.
And we'll wrap this up with this. I just looking at the schedule.
Yeah.
Because I think that those two teams are going to come down to the wire between the Ducks and the Kings.
Yeah.
They play they play twice in a row. It's not a back-to-back. It is, well, it's a back-to-back. Technically, it's 2 games in a row. But they play the 19th of April in LA, and then they have 3 days off, and then they play again. And then they play again okay, so the first one's in Anaheim, the second one's in LA. And those are, after that, the Ducks only have 3 games left in the season. Yeah. So that's at the very end of the year. I think those 2 games back to back will be very, very telling. Yeah. But let me see if it's the same for the Kings, if they have any games in between those 2.
Yeah. And why you're looking for that.
They play Chicago in between those 2 games. So yeah.
Yeah, and while you're looking at that, I mean, really, what it goes back to the whole experience and age. Can the young Ducks can they really keep their head on their shoulders and be able to grind it down the line, as opposed to where this Kings team, like I said, they've been there before. Not all of them, but a good handful of them.
You're right. All right, let's talk about the tops of the standings now, and can any of these teams be caught? We'll get. And I'm not bragging here, but we'll get the Central out of the way, because the Avalanche with 78 points, St. Louis has 66. So the Avalanche are 12 points up on who's in second place, and then the Wild are at 65 points, so 13 points up on them. I think they have that pretty well in hand, unless something catastrophic falls to them. I don't see them being caught, so we won't really talk about them too much. Where do you want to go next, sir? You want to go to the Atlantic?
Let's go to the Atlantic. Let's get that over with.
Yeah, I mean, for no particular reason, we'll just pick that one out of a hat. You got the Panthers at 75, the Lightning at 72, and the Maple Leafs at 70. How does this end up?
I think it comes down to 2 things. I think it comes down to how well the Florida Panthers could perform down the line, because we've seen teams fizzle out at the end of the seasons and then just not be able to pick it back up in the playoffs. I'm not saying that's going to happen to the Panthers, but they have. We spoke about it at the top of the show how torrid of a pace they've had all season long. It's been proven in our rankings on a weekly basis, and it also comes down to Tampa. I think they're pretty content in second place in the division. I think they'll be completely fine with that, considering the amount of injuries that they've had, guys in and out of the lineup all season long. I think they're still in the mindset of, let's just get in and do what we do best. Having said that, though, I think if they're within a point or 2 of each other in the last couple of weeks, I think John Cooper will let the horses out of the barn and just let this team fly and go after that top spot. But then again, seeds don't mean anything in the playoffs, Chris. So at the end of the day, does it really matter?
They've proven that they don't care. They just want to get in. And I think you're right. If they're a point out, you release the hounds and try to go after it. Why not? Yeah. If they're not, they might even take the foot off the gas and just say, hey, Toronto, if you want number 2, take it. We don't care. So, what's their last game? Let me see. Their last game of the year is against the Islanders for the for your boys. They play the Panthers the 3rd to last game of the season.
Yeah.
So we'll see what that is. If that is something where the winner of that takes over first place, the last 2 games of the season, which both happen to be against the Blue Jackets for the Lightning, I would think that they're gonna, try to win those out.
Yeah.
If not, if they lose it, they might just say like, okay, let's do what we've done in the past. So this is going to be an interesting one. I think Florida will have that. I think Florida will finish this number 1, and it's going to be interesting. I mean, the Twin Lightnings and the Maple Leafs. I think could go either way, man. But I just have a gut feeling that the Maple Leafs are going to overtake them by like a point. And be number 2 while Tampa Bay's number 3. Not that Tampa Bay cares about it.
Yeah, I was about to say, Go ahead. You could have it. We'll give it to you right now and wrap it up.
Yeah, just get to the end of the regular season. We're fine. In the Metropolitan, you got the Hurricanes, been up there pretty much all season long at 74. Based on points percentage, Pittsburgh is number 2 right now with 70 points, and the Rangers have 71 points. While the Rangers have 2 games in hand against Pittsburgh, they're still at number 3 right now. How do you think that one is going to shape up in the Met?
I think the Hurricanes are a very good team. They're a team that I'm kind of nervous for in terms of can they continue playing like this and not be that team that makes an early exit. Having said that, you look at the Pittsburgh Penguins, how they started out, and they just catapulted themselves up the standings, and that's the team where that team scares me. That's a team that even
Yeah.
against my Lightning, I wouldn't want to play those guys till the conference finals. I think really what it comes down to is that, like I said before with Crosby, but that entire team, that core, for as long as they've been together, they're ageless. I've never seen anything like it. And what it really comes down to, can their goaltending hold up as the season winds down? And I think that's going to be something. Can the Rangers goaltending beat the Pittsburgh goaltending down the stretch?
I think so. I think, I like Tristan Jarry. I think he's a great goalie, and you got to, who's I mean, we were talking about the Rangers earlier, and Shesterkin, and Georgiev is struggling.
Yeah.
He's struggling. So, I know in the playoffs you kind of run with your number one more often than not. So maybe it does favor the Rangers a little bit. But yeah, if one of those guys needs a break, who do you trust more in a backup sense? I don't know. I think I'd go Pittsburgh on that. But again, I think this mirrors the Atlantic, where I think the Hurricanes will have number 1 locked down, and the fight will be for 2 and 3 between the Rangers and the Penguins.
Yeah.
And it's like a flip of a coin right now. I don't know. It's tough. And again, there's really nobody pressuring any of those teams. Let's see. Where's the Rangers? So behind the Rangers is the Capitals at 65. So the Capitals are 6 points out. The Rangers have 2 games in hand against the Capitals.
Yeah.
So
unless
Detroit
Detroit goes on an absolute tear the last couple of games, I don't see it. Or if the Islanders win their last 36 games, I mean, I don't see. This is really a 3-horse, well, a 2.5-horse race if you're counting Columbus, because like we said before, they have the goaltending. They are a scrappy team. They can win games in overtime if need be. It just comes down to, can Washington and Boston not show their age?
I don't know. I mean, I think they are. I feel because Washington was hot earlier in the year.
Yeah.
Like with our power rankings, they were up to, I think they were in the top 5. And I remember saying, like, let's just let the season play out, because they got to do this for the duration, and for those tired legs, those old legs, it's going to catch up to them. It has a little bit. They're still up there. They're still good enough to obviously be a playoff team, but
they did not look.
They hold on?
They did show their age tonight against the Rangers, losing 4-1. So
is that what it was?
Yeah. So that is maybe a sign of things that potentially come in the next couple of weeks.
All right. And finally, the Pacific. This is going to be the fun one. You have Calgary at 66 right now, the Golden Knights at 62, the Kings at 61, Edmonton 59, Anaheim 59, Vancouver 54, Sharks 50, and the Kraken are we don't talk about Bruno. So pretty much, I mean, if you want to throw the Sharks in there, all but Seattle is in this division. But as far as the top goes, is Calgary now running away with this thing, or will they, or will Vegas, once Eichel gets going, it's still Vegas's to take over?
I'm gonna make a prediction that maybe some Flames fans might think is a little crazy. Maybe even you. I think Eichel or not, I think Vegas wins this division. I think I haven't watched a whole ton of Vegas, but in the handful of games that I've watched, just their ability to just rise to any occasion throughout the game, and just how they're not sloppy with the puck. They're one of the most well-poised teams I've seen play all year, and I think that they show their experience, and I think this is the year maybe they get over the hump. I mean, I think that they could win the division, and they're one of those teams where maybe they could challenge your boys in the playoffs at some point down the line. But I can't see Calgary. I think Calgary's maybe a year away from being that team. But until then, I think Vegas is going to go on a tear over the next couple of weeks, and we'll see a couple of flip flops along the way, though.
Yeah, this could really go down to the last week.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like Vegas is one of those teams the past couple of years that you're going to have to play your best game to beat them.
Yeah.
And I don't get the same sense from them. They're still a very good team, but I feel like I sense some like holes in their game this year where typically they're just on point all the time. And like I said, you got to play a perfect. They're not going to beat themselves.
No.
And every once in a while they'll have some bad shifts, and you can take advantage of it. And getting rid of Fleury, like and Leonard is not the day-to-day guy. Like their goaltending's a little iffy. Their depth is a little iffy. Those top lines are really good. Are they going to be a tough out? Yes. But I don't know. I feel like Calgary can now that they've taken this and they're feeling confident. I like where Calgary is sitting, and they have 2 games in hand on them as well. I don't know. Vegas, maybe they'll prove me wrong because of, like we're saying with other teams that have all this experience. They have it. As young as the franchise is, a lot of the guys on the team have it. So maybe when this end of the season comes, they'll ramp it up. But to me, they are an up and down team right now, and they're not as set as they have been in the past. So they can be caught. And would it surprise me if they fell down to the 3rd spot and the Kings caught them? Would not. But it also wouldn't surprise me if Vegas does exactly what you were saying and catches Calgary and take number 1. That's how crazy this division is right now. Is Vegas could be number 1, they could be number 3. It's a wild, wild division. So that's going to be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, definitely. Everybody watching this on YouTube, definitely drop in the comment section who you think is going to win the Pacific, because
I'd love to know.
Yeah.
Yep. So it'll all play out in the weeks to come. So that'll wrap it up for today. Didn't really talk about kind of the bottom feeders this week, but you can see it there on YouTube. Pretty much the same. Hasn't changed all that much. Canadians still looking up at the rest of the world. So next week we will return with a fresh batch of power rankings, and maybe my Avalanche can be there for 2 weeks in a row. Let's see. I'm going to full screen this one more time. Just focus in on that number 1 way up there. It looks so nice. It's beautiful. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. He is Mr. Adam Denker from Locked On Lightning. I'm Chris Maselli from Locked On Avalanche. And we will see you guys next week.